The OldPreMeds podcast, session number 156. You're a non-traditional student entering the medical field on your terms. You may have had some hiccups along the way, but now you're ready to change course and go back and serve others as a physician. This podcast is here to help answer your questions and help educate you on your non-traditional journey to becoming a physician. Welcome to the OldPreMeds podcast. My name is Dr. Ryan Gray, your host here every week, where I take questions directly from the non-traditional pre-med forum over at premedforums.com. This week we have a great question about going to pre-med conferences. Our student says, I'm curious about the soft side values of the UC Davis Pre-Health Conference, specifically for an older applicant coming as a career changer. I've read that it is a fantastic overall pre-med conference that gives a great introduction to all the details on the basics, but I'd like to get a feel for some additional possible benefits. I can make arrangements to attend, but want to make sure that the effort is worthwhile. Reading the list of schools attending is impressive. Do AdCom attendees make note of future applicants they talk to and are interested in keeping an eye out for his or her application? Is it an option to come in pre-interview mode, dressed business casual, and have something to leave behind like a resume or CV? Is networking possible? Can an attendee actually walk away having made a good connection with someone who has a role in admissions? Can a line of communication be opened via connection made at this conference? I previously attended the much smaller conference at UCSD and have not had any response to any of the fill this out with any questions forms. So I'm not sure if the AdComs actually have time to follow up. Do the admissions committee attendees, presenters find value in attending the conference? Do they prospect at all? I suppose the bottom line is if someone already has a good handle on the prereqs, MCAT preparation, application cycle, etc., is there additional value in attending the UC Davis Pre-Health Conference? Thanks. So the root of this question is all about, should I go to conferences? Right? This specific student is mentioning UC Davis. There are other conferences all around. The AAMC has minority fair conferences. AMSA has pre-med conferences. They have their national convention where a lot of pre-med students go. So the question is, can you get any benefit out of going to these conferences? Let me tell you a story to answer that. I was working with a student, or am working with a student, who hasn't had much luck with the application cycle until she went to a conference. Now, I talked to her a couple days actually before this same conference, the UC Davis conference. I said, look, if you can make it out to the conference, if you can find a way to come across the United States, she's on the East Coast, UC Davis is in Davis, California. If you can make it out, it'll be worth your while. I will personally introduce you to some of the admissions committee members that I know. Obviously, that doesn't work for every student. I can't introduce you to people I know. I can't introduce everybody, but this specific student, because I knew her well, I knew her value and what she was bringing to the table, I was able to introduce her to some people. And she was able to make some connections at the UC Davis conference and have those conversations about who she is, talk to the admissions committees about what her application looks like, about where her weaknesses are. And it's a little different because she's in the middle of the application cycle. If you're doing this pre-application cycle, it allows you to ask for more advice, because you are not a current applicant. As a current applicant, your advice isn't as robust as it may be if you were not an applicant, if you were planning to apply next year or the year after. And so, depending on where you are in your journey, if you are a current applicant and the application cycle isn't going well, or maybe it is going well, I highly, highly, highly recommend going to conferences. Number one, maybe you get to meet me, and that'd be awesome. Number two, you do get to network. And the poster is saying, is networking possible? 100% it's possible. Now, the question is, how much effort are you going to put into it? Are you going to go to all of the sessions and avoid the tabling, be shy that there's a crowd, or are you going to kind of get up there, say hello, shake hands, definitely bring some information about yourself, potentially if you're a current applicant, potentially bringing your application to show the admissions committee members, bringing a resume if you're not a current applicant, and coming prepared with questions. That's the key thing. Don't just go, Hi, I'm Jane. I don't have anything else to say. Come with questions. Come prepared, specific questions for each of the schools. Do your research like you're planning on applying to these schools. Do your research like you're going to talk to them about why you want to go to their school. Don't just walk up to them and say, hi, tell me everything I need to know, because that's a useless conversation. Go in, have questions prepared. If you're a current applicant, talk about the application, where you may be struggling, why maybe you haven't gotten an interview. The student I was talking about, her MCAT score is low. And so we were able to talk about that it's her second time taking it, and her score increased a ton, but it's still low. And so here are all the other things that are awesome that maybe you should think about and why she's a good fit for your school. And so the student went to the UC Davis conference, made some good connections there, and then the following week or 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, whatever it was, went to the AAMC Minority Fair in Texas. So she lives on the East Coast. She flew out to UC Davis. She went to Austin, Texas for this AAMC Minority Fair. And at that fair, she got even more traction. She got to see a couple of the same people. She got to show her face again. She got to meet some new people. One of the people there actually started kind of interviewing her. They pulled up her application, started asking her questions. She ended up getting an interview because of the connections that she made. Now, we don't know yet if it led into an acceptance, but we're hoping that it does. And she probably wouldn't have gotten that interview without showing her face at one of these conferences. You have to put yourself out there. You have to show who you are. You have to remove yourself from the comfort of your home and show these people that you are an actual human being and not just some numbers in a spreadsheet somewhere in their computer. The networking is amazing. Now, let's talk about some of the other questions here, potentially. I'm not going to go through all of them, but hopefully I'll hit all of them through my conversation. It depends on who the school is sending, the representatives that they're sending. It depends on who those people are as to the amount of value that you can get from each of the schools. Some of the schools will send the admissions committee members. They'll send admissions committee members. They'll send the director or dean of admissions. When I was at UC Davis this year, I had a table right next to University of Michigan, and Dean Gay was there, an amazing physician, an amazing administrator, the dean of admissions at University of Michigan. And there were several other deans and directors of admissions. But then a lot of the schools just had regular old admissions committee members, or just kind of more PR people, marketing people to bring flyers and just to say, hey, here's why our school is awesome, and not necessarily the type of people that you can connect with and say, here's why you guys should be looking at my application. So it completely depends on who the schools are sending. Look, if you think about it, do the schools need to be there, right? So one of the questions, do they prospect at all? Sure, maybe they're prospecting a tiny bit, but do they really need to? Schools are getting thousands upon thousands upon thousands of applications for 100 or 200 seats. They don't need to be going to these conferences. They're hoping to get their name out there so that the right students are applying, so that the 6,000 applications that they have to go through are the perfect applicant for them, and that makes their job much harder, but they want that, versus having 6,000 applications and half of them are junk because they don't really match the values and the mission of the school. And so they're out there getting their name recognized, or you getting their name and their mission and vision and all that stuff, so you understand who they are and what they're about, so that when you apply, you actually are a good fit for their school. And so again, it really depends on who these people are that are there. Can you make a connection with them? You have to try to make a connection. You have to go and network. And if you're an introvert like I am, you have to put on your smiley face and go and shake hands and say hello and ask questions. Be prepared to give them information. Be prepared to talk about some of your weaknesses. If you're in the middle of the application, be prepared to talk about some of your weaknesses. If you're not in the middle of your application, and talk about what you're doing to work on them and kind of get their buy-off on it. Right? If you've been struggling in an area, say, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Is that something that your school would be okay with? Go out there and network. It's so important. Whatever you do, you need to get out there and show your face. Not only that, but you also meet, hopefully, other students who are going through the same process, and you can commiserate with them, you can exchange phone numbers, and form a little group of students who are all then supporting each other through this process. So not only do you meet the schools, but you meet other people. I believe conferences are one of the best investments that you can make as a pre-med or anything, right? Once you're in residency, even in medical school, even as an attending, going to conferences, collaborating with your colleagues, learning, and just being there with people who understand what you're going through. It's a very, very powerful thing. So hopefully that answers your question. If you have a question that you want answered here on the podcast, go to premedforums.com, click on non-traditional pre-med form, and then ask your question. Register for an account first if you don't already have one. Hope you have a great week. We'll see you next time.